Welcome back. Now, almost half of all teachers in South Africa's public schools are over the age of 50. That's according to the research by Stellenbosch University. This will inevitably result in a period of mass retirement. Projections show that around 2029, over 17,000 will leave the profession. So what does this mean? I'm joined by Stellenbosch University's Dr. Debra. Thank you very much, Doc, for your time here on eNCA. Firstly, for me, it looks as though there's not a lot of young people wanting to get into teaching or the education space. So that says a lot about the appetite then by young people to go there. Maybe they don't respect the teaching industry anymore because of the lack of pay, etc. What could this be about?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So I think you raise one of the most important questions about the problem. So it's actually quite interesting that the number of students enrolling in education has been increasing quite a bit. The issue I think that comes into play is whether or not that choice was the first choice. So universities are actually doing quite a good job at producing teachers. But a recent study conducted in 2018, which is called the TALIS study, so it's a big international survey of teachers, and in South Africa there were just over 2,000 teachers surveyed. Around half of them said that they did not want to be teachers. That was not their first choice. So it may be that the choice to study teaching is one that comes out of necessity. It's a career that offers a lot of job security. The pay is relatively quite good. But then when the same study, the TALIS study, when it asked teachers who would probably be leaving teaching in the near future, it was almost a third of teachers actually said they were going to leave teaching in the next 5 years. And salary actually came out as one of the reasons for that decision. So the pay being too low.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking, because my aunt was a teacher, and she always used to say to us, I'll have more money once I've resigned.
Yes.
While I work as a teacher, it's a very thankless job. I work long hours, sometimes even during school holidays, I'm up marking papers, but nobody is going to be thankful to me for all the efforts that I make, and I'll in fact have more money once I leave. So I think a lot of young people are thinking maybe I shouldn't go that route then, especially when you see news about government reneging on 3% hikes that they wanted to give, or giving 3% hikes to teachers. Then you get young people who are thinking, well, I want to live a better life.
Yeah, exactly. So the point you raised about your aunt saying, it's a thankless job, that also comes through in the TALIS work. So the TALIS study asked teachers, do you feel that your work is valued firstly by society? Is it valued by the principal management of your school? And then is it valued by the learners in your classroom? And what is actually quite interesting is that the decision to leave teaching, a more significant predictor of that choice, is whether or not you think society values what you are doing, not whether the learners value it. So it may be that teachers do think that the status of being a teacher isn't very high.
Yeah.
And we have to also remember that teaching is a graduate profession now. So to become a teacher, you complete 4 years of post-secondary schooling at university. So there are two essential routes to becoming a teacher. Either you do a 4-year B.Ed degree, or you do a traditional 3-year bachelor's degree and then 1-year PGCSE. So it's a graduate degree, which means young people who end up with this degree, they have options available to them in other sectors. They don't actually need to stay in teaching. And if the experience of being a teacher is one that is quite negative, either because you don't feel like your work is being valued, teachers also report that there are poor relationships between themselves and other teachers, or between themselves and school management. That also comes through as an important factor. Travel to work, the cost of travel to work. These are things that actually affect everybody and not just teachers. So yes, what you describe is a very important part of the problem.
Did any of them express that they don't want to go into teaching, besides the lack of appetite for the profession? Did they express that they don't want to go into teaching because, maybe of a lack of infrastructure or a lack of resources that they always hear about, where teachers have to do over and above what they're supposed to because there is not enough resources?
So that wasn't one of the responses available in the TALIS survey. So the question about why they actually did eventually make the choice to study teaching, the responses were more around whether or not they saw it as a secure job, whether or not they saw it as a job that paid well relative to other opportunities at the time. I think, at the end of the day, there's a lot of pressure on young people to get a university education. And if you had this dream to pursue something, but either the marks you received in matric prevent you from getting access to, let's say, a commerce degree or a science degree, and you maybe take a few years trying to upgrade your marks, because what we actually do see is that the choice to study teaching increases with the number of years since finishing matric. And that tells me something about the decision that's been made. So it's almost like I would want to do something else. I've maybe tried all the different options to get into the degree I want to get into. I failed to make that transition, and so what remains? Potentially a B.Ed degree. So the thing that we need to be thinking about is, how do we start to talk about teaching as an attractive choice for young people?
I think that's
because I still think it isn't seen as a status job.
Yeah, you see, and that's exactly the problem, because then you are running the risk of having teachers who are in the system who actually don't have the passion to be teachers. They're just there because it was the last resort and the last thing that they could get into to further their education. They'd rather be somewhere else. But also in your report, Doc, you also mentioned that to be able to combat this coming wave of retirement, I think you say that South Africa would have to graduate between 6,000 and 13,000 additional teachers each year by 2030. Is this even a possibility in our country after what you and I just discussed?
So it's a possibility in terms of, I think the universities have the capacity to do it. So the capacity is there. What I think we're talking about is whether or not the desire to pursue that route is there. So I think that's why the conversation around teaching needs to be one that comes from an angle of, teaching is a hard job. I think we need to respect that it is a tough job. And I think it does require a certain personality to be in teaching, because, you're working with young kids. And we also know that the sort of socioeconomic realities of our country does make teaching more than just that. Many teachers are almost surrogate parents, they're counselors. And so it is a very difficult job. So yes, we want students who enter into teaching first to want to be teachers. We also then want those who enter into teaching to be those who have the skills to teach the type of subjects that we know are currently, where South African learners are currently underperforming, so in STEM subjects. So we do know that from some of the work that's been done by some of my colleagues, is that students who enroll into teaching have weaker mathematics performance coming out of matric than students who enroll in commerce, engineering, science, for example. So that says something about the decision. If I have the maths marks to get into a science degree, I'm rather going to go for a science degree than for a teaching degree. So it is a mindset shift, I think, that needs to take place. The capacity is there. It's just, how do we get motivated, capable young people to pursue teaching as their first choice career, and then to keep them in there? Because I think also something that's interesting is that the youngest teachers actually not only have a greater content knowledge, so they tend to perform better on maths and reading tests themselves, their learners also appear to do better. Right. So there is a positive correlation between early experienced teachers and learner performance. But then just after this teacher is starting to get performance out of their kids in the classroom, they leave the profession.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for speaking. Thank you for speaking to us. Hopefully by 2030, we won't find ourselves with a shortage of teachers in South Africa. That is Stellenbosch University's Dr. Debra Shepherd.